First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua Ba'ashem Okakadash. Double honors to the other bishops and apostles of Great Millstone that taught me this truth. Today's video, I wanted to go into how the 4th of July, the birth of American Independence Day, was prophesied. It was in the Bible before any of this happened. And, getting straight to the point, let's go into it in Daniel, the 7th chapter. Lord willing, this is a quick hit. When you go into Daniel, the 7th chapter, this is one of those chapters that gives you a breakdown of the kingdoms to come. It starts talking about 4 great beasts coming up out of the earth. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings, which is talking about the Assyrian Babylonian Empire. And then it goes to the second, which is the Medo-Persian Empire. Third is the Greek Empire, and fourth is the Roman Empire, which right now we're still in the Roman Empire. America is a reincarnation of the Roman Empire. And the scholars know this, When you go into Daniel, the 2nd chapter, they have it, listed how the first kingdom is Assyrio-Babylonian Empire, the second is Medo-Persia, the third is Greece, and the fourth is Rome. So, and then the last one, the divine kingdom, which that is what fastly is approaching. So, they know these prophecies, but they still don't know the ins and outs because they are not the prophets. And that knowledge has been essentially revealed today by the way of the prophets, which if you believe or not are here, it's regardless, they're here. And, Lord willing, I'm a part of that number. It talks about in Revelation 14, about the 144,000, and that no man but those, could sing that song, which that song is talking about the prophecies, the understandings, the breakdowns. Because when you do it the right way, it's like a song. It's, seamless. You get some here, some there, and it just flows. So only those men are going to be able to do that. And it talks about how, in Babylon, their blood was found. What is that? Revelation 18? Right. Revelation 18 verse 20, it says, "Rejoice over her, thou heaven and ye holy apostles and prophets, for God hath avenged you on her." Right. So, in order for the apostles and prophets to be avenged, because of Babylon, that means they have to have been here to be done wronged for the Most High to avenge them. And if that's not enough, verse 24 says, "And in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints and of all that were slain upon the earth." Right? So the blood of the prophets and the saints is in this landmass, aka they're here. So this is why, we're able to break down these prophecies. And, what I'm about to go into is because, as it says, at the end, the Most High was going to increase the knowledge. And part of that is the Most High sending his men out there to explain these things. So going into, America, where is America talked about in the scriptures? First, right here, Daniel 7 and let's start at verse 19. It says, "So the fourth beast," says this, "then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron and his nails of brass, which devoured, brake in pieces, and stabbed the residue with his feet." Which this goes into the ancient Roman Empire, first and foremost, right? How they had the strongest military to ever exist, up to that time. And it says, "stamped the residue with his feet." It says, "And of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows." And you know what I want to do? The 10 horns. Yeah, I guess I'll break it down as it goes. So, first, what are the 10 horns on this beast? Easily put, there's this chart here. If you search up Great Millstone, the brothers have compiled it, and this explains, what the beast is. So the 10 horns, it was essentially like a future prophecy. It says the 10 horns represent the Common Market or the European Economic Community, EEC, established in 1958. Today, the EEC is known as the EU, the European Union. It goes to Belgium, Denmark, France, Italy, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Greece, Spain, and Portugal, England and Ireland, and West Germany. So that's what it's dealing with. And it says, and the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes, and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. Right? And the reason I wanted to jump forward first is because it makes more sense, when it's described here. Let's start at verse 24. It says, and the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall rise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. Okay, and that, extra horn is talking about America. Right? You had the 10 horns, and another was going to rise from them, and he was going to be diverse, and he was going to subdue 3, of those horns of those kings. Which that's all talking about the story of America. Okay, how America, essentially, or they came over here, they separated from the British, and America established itself by defeating the Spanish, the French, and the British. And those were those 3 horns, which if you go up top right here, it says, and before whom 3 fell. Right? So it says, and another shall rise after them, America, and he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings, and he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of time. Okay, and that's talking about slavery. How, the Israelites were enslaved over here in America for that specific amount of time. Right? A time, it says, for a time, times, and the dividing of time. Which you go into that, that time frame is going into 350 years. Time times the dividing of time, half. 350 years, which when you go into, when was the first Negro slave ship in America, you get, the first Negro slave ship was in 1619. And one thing also is that 100 years prior to that, you already had what was called the reverse slave trade, which was when they were sending, the Northern Kingdom over to Seville's Plain. Reverse slave trade, Atlantic. I guess I have to type it in differently, but essentially what happened is they were taking, the Northern Kingdom, which would be your so-called Latinos and natives that were here in the Americas already, and sending them over there to the east, right? All over the east, and primarily Seville, Spain. So that was 100 years before 1619, but 1619 was the first Negro slave ship, and that's when all 12 tribes were essentially being now enslaved together, which the Bible also talks about that. But if you do in 1619 to 350 years later, you get 1970, 1980, and that is when the truth came out, when the Most High essentially brought out this knowledge, out of Harlem, New York. So, it makes complete sense from a prophetic standpoint how it talks about a time, times, and the dividing of time we're going to be given into the hands of these Edomites, right, to be worn out, to be destroyed. But at the end, it says, but the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion, to consume and to destroy it unto the end. And the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. Right, so that's the end of the end, is how at the end of the day, the Israelites are going to be the people ruling, the saints of the Most High. And this earth is going to be established and ruled in righteousness. So the main point out of this, which, when I was looking at it, it kind of says it twice. But the point is that the 10 horns, there's an extra horn that popped up, and that it subdued 3 of those horns to establish itself. That is America. Now, when you go into Revelation 17, here it gets even more clear. So Revelation chapter 17 and verse 9, it says, "And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth." Right? This is all going into the beast, right, with 7 heads and 10 horns. Verse 3, "So he carried me away into the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns." Right, so Daniel 7, Revelation 17, it's all talking about the same thing. And we know that that woman is going into Babylon, aka America, as in the chart. So it says, jumping down, "The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth, and there are 7 kings. 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space." Right, so let's go to the chart. It says that at that time, 5 had fallen, 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And what is that talking about? So, 7 heads, Germania Major, the Romans, the French, the Spanish, Germania Minor, British, and the Greeks. And that 5 had fallen. So 5 had fallen and 1 is. So the one that was is obviously the Romans. That was when Paul was alive, who the ones that are ruling. Now, when you go into the 5 that had fallen, it would deal with Germania Minor, the Spanish, the French, Germania Major, and the Greeks. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And one thing too is that they're not called that during that time. They were called in their ancient names. The French were there, but in their ancient names. For example, if you search up the French and the Gaelics, right, Gaelic and French. I literally searched it up right before. The French during Roman times. Right, during Roman times, modern day France was known as Gaul or Gallia. It was populated by diverse Celtic tribes until Julius Caesar conquered the region between 58 and 51 BC. This led to a rich Gallo-Roman culture and the evolution of vulgar Latin into the French language. Okay, so, these essentially kingdoms were in their ancient names, and they were conquered. So going back to Revelation 17, 5 had fallen, 1 is, the Romans, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. Right, so what was the next kingdom after that? It was the British, right? And it says, "And the beast that was, and is not, even he is of the 8th, and is of the 7th, and goeth into perdition." Right, so that it says, "And the other is not yet come, and when he cometh, he must continue a short space." What is the next one to come? It's going into the British. And the reason it says it was gonna continue a short space is because if you search up how long was the British Empire, it was around 400 years. That's how long the British Empire was. Right, so it was a short time period. And let's see. And even then, it was shorter than that when you go into it. Because, if I remember correctly, I'd have to go back on it. But it was until the time that America came out. But regardless, let's keep going. It says, "And the beast that was, and is not," right? Because he was seeing, the beast already done. But in that time, America was not established yet. Britain wasn't established yet. It says, "Even he is the 8th," right? So the beast, the 8th, is going into America, the 8th, and is of the 7th, and goeth into perdition. Right, so America is of the 7th. It comes from the British, and that's the history. How the 8th was going to come from the 7th. And when you search up, how did America come to be a nation? That's where you get the history. It says, "America formed as a nation through a rebellion by 13 British colonies seeking political liberty, religious freedom, and economic autonomy. This sparked the Revolutionary War against Great Britain in 1775. And it goes into what's called today the American-French War, right? the quasi-war, the United States and France. Then you go into, and it might have another name, then you go into the Spanish-American War, was fought between Spain and the United States. And then you go into the British-American War. And that's, what's mainly recorded. So that would be those three horns: the French, the Spanish, and the British. So it says, and the beast that was and is not, even he is the eighth, and is of the seven, and goeth into perdition, right? Because his place is going to be destroyed. And the 10 horns were thou sawest the 10 kings, which have not received no kingdom as yet, but received power as kings 1 hour with the beast, right? Because the 10 horns dealing with NATO and EU, okay? The way that whole system operates is that, it says, these have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. You attack one NATO member, you attack all of them, right? And that's why they might not necessarily have, the strongest kingdom. Some of them are tiny, kingdoms, tiny, but they receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast, right? They receive that power fully, temporarily with America, NATO, EU, all that. And eventually it goes into how, verse 16, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, they shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. For God hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree, and give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. So, at a certain point in time, America's allies, NATO and EU, are going to actually turn on America and destroy this place. And that's slowly, what we're seeing right now with Trump and NATO, is how, those prophecies are starting to play out. Trump lashes out at NATO as rift widens ahead of summit. Ridiculous for US to maintain current NATO support. Trump is disappointed that NATO allies refuse to become more actively involved in attacking Iran. And there's just more and more, separation, which eventually, as it says, they're going to shoot fire upon this place. So hopefully I did my best to explain that. It's been a while since I've gone into it, but the main thing to remember is how it goes into those horns, and how there is an extra horn, going into America, and that it subdued 3 horns, 3 kings: the Spanish, the French, the British. And then second, how, this extra head, aka America, came from the 7th, and that's also part of the history. So this was all prophesied before, it even happened. It was already written that it was going to happen in this way. So I'll leave it there. Hopefully it's just edifying with that, and give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushua, Ba'ashem Kakadash, and double honors to the elder bishops and apostles of Great Millstone that taught me this truth. Shalom to your life. Shalom.